Hey, what's happening? And welcome to the presentation for this presentation, and we're going to be going over the shoulder girdle. Again, everything that we're going through today is really just give you a familiarity. You don't have to remember all this stuff, all this anatomy and physiology and this and that. I'm just going to be pointing towards things so that you can have just enough familiarity where you can get a focus when you're going through your where you're going through your program. No different than if you're trying to affect your quads when you're doing knee extensions or something of that nature when you're training. So today is the shoulder girdle. Shoulder girdle. The bones that make up the shoulder girdle are the rib cage. So all these, the scapula, which slides along the rib cage, the clavicle, which connects right there on the scapula and right there on the sternum, and the sternum. And so we have all of these that are the shoulder girdle. And we're going to go for each of those joints. You'll notice that these are all different joints. So we got one right there, where the collarbone meets the breastbone. And we have all these joints where the scapula or the shoulder blade slides along the rib cage. And we have this one over here. You might have heard of that. It's called the AC joint. We got a lot of injury over there. That's where the collarbone meets the scapula or the shoulder blade. And so we're going to go through all of those. So these are all movements. So I'll give you a little bit of preview while we're getting there. All right, so there we got the AC joint. We'll take a little bit closer look right there. And what happens here a lot is it separates. As you get a separation when it's supposed to be together. And so our stabilization of the scapula will help alleviate that separation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Let's see what else we got. These are all movements. Our shoulder blade along the rib cage is really the main joint that we're going to be looking at, is how to keep that shoulder blade functioning in the right way along the rib cage. Okay. So let's see. And then we have where the collarbone meets the breastbone. We already mentioned that, but that's where it is right there. Okay. All right. And so the muscles, let's go first through the movements. First movement we're going to go through here this is called posterior tilt. And this is where the scapula or the shoulder blade rolls forward from the bottom along the rib cage, and along the top it rolls backward. All right. This is going to be a very important movement. A lot of people are more familiar with some of the other movements of the shoulder blade, but I'm going into this one first, and I'll actually revisit it last again because it is so important for why we get so much shoulder, why we get so many shoulder issues. A lot of it actually comes from the shoulder girdle, or at least originates, and the root cause is at the shoulder girdle rather than necessarily at the shoulder joint itself. Now we have shoulder blade protraction. Right. There's protraction from the side. So showing the shoulder blade going that way along the rib cage. It's a little bit different because then the posterior tilt, because protraction, the entire shoulder blade slides along, whereas posterior tilt, the bottom part goes forward and the top part goes backward. So that's just to let you know that. There we have retraction, showing that from the back. You can see the shoulder blade coming back towards the spine. And then we see retraction from the side. What happens with the shoulders? The shoulders, go backwards as well, of course. And now we have adduction, which is, the shoulder blade goes in towards the spine from the bottom and down from the top. All right, now we have shoulder anterior tilt, where the top shifts down and the bottom part, which we can't see here, shifts backwards. So the opposite of posterior tilt. Maybe we can even call it forward tilt and backward tilt. We need more backward tilt. Forward tilt is too much for most people. This is elevation, so shoulder shrugs, you'll get that a lot. But a lot of times we'll have the arm up above us, and we'll be pushing the arm up into elevation as well. So it's not just a shrug, it's sometimes the press. So the pressing version of the elevation. And then we have the opposite of that, which is called depression, which is pushing the shoulder blade down towards the hips. All right, and then we have abduction, which is the shoulder blades coming out as the arms go up. And all right, let's go over the muscles of the shoulder girdle. So let's start all the way back here. So now we have the rhomboids. Those do primarily retraction. And so we'll mention those when we tell you how to do shoulder blade retraction. We have the levator scapula. The levator scapula brings us up, but also tends to tilt us up and forward along into that anterior tilt as well as elevation. Okay, we have the serratus. Now, this is a very, very important muscle. We'll talk about this. This one does both protraction, but it also does posterior tilt. And we're going to be focusing very strongly on that posterior tilt. This is going to be like your magic. This is going to be like your magic, your little magic technique towards getting rid of shoulder blade, rid of shoulder dysfunction, is by focusing on the serratus and on posterior tilt. It's magical. It is one factor that is just not concentrated on enough in other domains, right? And we have the trapezius over here. Trapezius does elevation, and it also does retraction over here, and also participates a little bit in depression as well. But we'll be focusing primarily on the elevation and the retraction. So elevation again, depression. All right, and now this is a very important muscle too. And this muscle is, we're going to concentrate on that as being overactive. And so we're going to try to get it not to be as overactive. And this is called the pec minor, the pectoralis minor. And the pectoralis minor is sometimes overactive and gives us all sorts of trouble in shoulder complex dysfunction. Okay. And let's see, did we go over the pec? And now the last one we have is pectoralis major. So the pectoralis major participates by spinning that clavicle forward and giving it pressure down from these upper fibers up here. And also, as it moves the shoulder joint, it pulls the shoulder girdle forward as well. The pectoralis major is going to be a primarily underactive muscle, which means we're going to try to activate it more than anything in our programs, and we'll teach you how. And that is the end of our shoulder girdle presentation. Thank you very much. Again, I hope this gives you a good familiarity and that it doesn't lead to more confusion. But I promise you, even if there is confusion and all that, we will clear it up and we'll paint a much, much better picture for you in our practical portion. This is just a base of knowledge so that you have some familiarity with what's happening. Thanks a lot, folks.